I like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. It's Netflix time. This movie's called Molly's Game. Former Olympian Molly Bloom ran a high-stakes poker game for the stars until her lofty lifestyle sent her nearly to prison. So it's a crime drama based on real life. It came out in 2017. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes long. I've been wanting to do this one for a while. Spoiler alert, let's get it. So we had Molly Bloom. When she first started, she was a champion champion skier with her father as a trainer. During her skiing expos, she damn near broke her neck twice. Her vertebrae and her spine are mechanically infused together. Yeah, they had to put a lot of metal screws in her back. 12 years later, she wrote a book about herself and was living in West Hollywood. She was running poker games from lucrative hotels and got busted by the FBI. But I'm skipping a little bit of ahead. She put out this video when she was a teen about how she doesn't trust people and the world is pretty much fucked up. Alright, so now we get to the beginning of her escapades. For a long time, she's been studying to try to get her law degree. Her side hustle was being a cocktail waitress. She was able to talk to a lot of big-time executives that came to these clubs. One guy that wanted to give her some work was a guy by the name of Dean. Dean had her set up in his office job to be a secretary. But her big break came when Dean one day wanted her to schedule a poker meeting. But Dean, as scrupulous as he is, did have a lot of access to celebrities in the area. So they set up in this hole-in-the-wall spot and they conducted poker games. All types of people came in, including this guy who was a bona fide movie star. We'll get back to him later. Dean gets back to Molly, making sure everything's recorded on the spreadsheet. Dean made sure everybody tipped Molly, but little did she know this will start down a path of mayhem. Okay, we're going to be jumping back and forth around the timeline, so bear with me. So in present time, Molly's about to be introduced to a new lawyer. But before she does, she has conversations with his daughter. And then she meets her lawyer, Idris Elba. They start discussing the legalities of the games. He knows that she can't pay him right now because of the legalities and the fact that the government has seized all her assets. A lot goes on in between this meeting. We get a flashback to Molly when she was 12 talking to her dad. We get another poker game set up. Yeah, we're going back to when she started again. Our man Magic Mike over here is about to bluff this guy into folding in a royal flush. Then Mike tells Molly to find some people that got a lot of money that don't know how to play poker and get them over to the game. Thinking to ourselves, how the fuck is she going to do that? Apparently she has some guy named David that could talk the other players into anything. Power of persuasion, I guess. Bottom line, she got more people with money to come to the games. She got herself an apartment, a new whip, and $17,000 to blow. So she told herself she was going to put off law school for another year. Back in present time, Idris is there for the arraignment, but he says he's not her lawyer because, he hasn't paid her the money yet. But then in the courtroom, he asks her certain questions about the book that she wrote. And considering the evidence that's represented, he has a change of heart. And he will represent her as his lawyer. Even Molly was surprised, like, what the fuck? Well, Molly, be happy. Now you got a lawyer. He probably believes he can untie her assets somehow. Then we get a flashback to when she was young. Her father berating her because she wants to have an opinion about something. Then we get back to her running poker with Dean. So at this point, I think they've been doing it for about 3 years now. And Dean pretty much owes money, so what he's going to do is cut back on her tips. So she's like, Dean, what the fuck though? So she's thinking to herself, she got to come up with a plan B. Especially after she gets replaced at the job. So basically, she opened up her own hotel because she had money, took all of Dean's clients, and gave them falsified numbers. So by the time Dean already figured it out, they would be at her hotel. She let all the players know the situation, and they decided to stick with her. Then she goes to talk to a lawyer to make sure that everything she's doing is legal. He says as long as you're not raking and taking a percentage, then it's all legal. Meanwhile, while they're running their poker games, this celebrity goofball's trying to holler at Molly. Molly's like, look, I'm not a hooker. We're trying to keep this sexually clean. We're trying to keep everything clean around here. She's like, you're lucky this is me because anybody else will blackmail you. And she's like, on top of that, you got a wife and kids. Like, dude, smarten up. So she's like, all right, I had enough of this dude. When everything's done, we had the one-on-one with Mike and Molly. She's trying to find a way to sustain players because they're missing out like $100,000 a week. Because he's beating the brakes off him. He's basically telling her just find new players. Which basically means find more fish. Find more people that want to spend money but don't know nothing about poker. So she talks about this guy named Harley that she can get. He's very reckless, but he has $12 million to his name. So Mike's like, get him, but he's like, to be honest, I don't even like playing poker. And she's like, well, why do you play? He says simply, he just likes destroying lives. This guy is heartless on the table, for real. Now, as they're setting up the tables again, we got this guy named Brad. He is ridiculously terrible at poker. He comes in and blows 20,000 here, 30,000 here, 50,000 here. He never wins a single game. She's like, dude, what is your purpose here? But his real purpose here is to make top people feel good and get connections so they can buy his technology and stuff. So basically, if he can make them feel good about winning, he knows he's going to get all his money back in interest. Selling his products and whatnot. So now here we have the $12 million man Harley. He doesn't lose at all. He hasn't joined Molly's games yet, but he will be real soon. In present time, Molly's seeing her lawyer again. He asks her about offers about selling the book. She's been holding off on it for precarious reasons. And then he starts asking her about flash drives. She's like, I can't give you the flash drives. Those will destroy people's lives. In the book, she had 112 names that were all false names, but only 4 of those names were legit. So she's been covering her bases on that end. He thought some people paid her off, but that's not the case. And the worst part about it is some of those names in there are Russian mafia tied. That part comes up later in the story. So let's get back to Harley. He's playing a $50,000 game right now with Brad. Now, as we explained, Brad is terrible, but Harley has never played him. He doesn't know how he bluffs. And because of that, Brad actually wins with a royal flush. Now, Harley only lost about $40,000, but because of that loss, he completely abandoned his rules of playing poker. He started losing a lot after that. His wife divorced him 2 days later, and after this one game he played with this Australian dude, we found out that he's actually $1 million owed in debt. I think he owed $1.2 million. Mike ends up helping out Harley, but because of that, he knows he won't climb out of debt, and then on top of that, it's kind of racketeering. And you know, Molly's not trying to play by those rules, she's trying to keep everything clean. So he gets offended because Molly talks to everybody except him. At the table, anyway. He's like, bottom line, they come here to play with me before they come here to play with you. And then he goes even further, talking about capping her tips. Next Tuesday, she was about to have another game night. Mike calls her before she even gets out the car, talking about, yeah, you're so fucked. Basically, he set up the meeting at a different location and took the customers right from under her nose. And because he's a movie star, he got pulled. Back in real time, they discuss her book a little bit, still trying to get her to sell to somebody. And then she goes to talk to this publisher. He says, I can get people to buy it and you'll get $1.5 million off your books. The only problem is you're going to have to come up with real names. And you know, she's not trying to use real names in the book. Obviously, this is a conversation they had before she even wrote the book. Then they start talking about the point system, correspondence, and all this stuff. And Edgar says, bottom line, if I don't get any point reduction, you're going to be looking at least 8 to 12 years minimum. So back at storyline time, after getting kicked away from Mike, she's like, is this it? Is this all I'm going to be doing? But after she jogs and thinks about it, she figures she still has a couple of connects in New York. So at that point, just off her reputation alone, she sets up some stuff in New York. So she gets her crew together and she wants to deal with legitimate clients. No more Hollywood celebrities, rock stars, and all that. With some help, she got 10 players within 7 weeks and got it cracking. And just for security, she had cameras set up in her room, in her house or whatever. The cameras go from the room to the poker table, by the way. And the homegirl tells her, like, look, man, you've been doing good, but you've been stiffed about 4 or 5 times. Eventually, you're going to have to rake one of these games. You can tell by her face she definitely doesn't want to do that, but she's somehow considering it. So we got this guy coming by to pick up a check, but then she tells him to sit down real quick. And she's like, yeah, I want to show you something. Basically showing this motherfucker adding false chips to the table. So she's like, bottom line, you owe me $57,000. And don't ever try to do this shit at any other game because, quite frankly, they'll murk your ass. And she says when she gets her money, then you get the tape. So now she's back talking to her homegirl again. Basically telling her, like, if I take a rake, this game will be illegal. But bottom line is, if you can't cover, then this shit won't exist. So it's like, what you gonna do? So in the next game that's played, which the stakes rose up to $3 million at this point, reluctantly, she gave the signal, and V took 200% right off the table. And she just officially took a rake, which is in violation of code 1955. Basically, illegal gambling. Now here we got this guy named Douglas. He's always talking to Molly after the games. He talks about a lot of different subjects and keeps her entertained. One day she asks if he can bring in some clients. So he plays with a bunch of Russians. He's the only Irish guy to ever play in the game. And then she explains to him, like, I'm not Irish. I'm like, really? And so that's when he considers bringing players to Molly's game. But you can tell she's getting desperate and this is about to go downhill real quick. So all these dudes start popping up, including this guy that doesn't have cash on him right now, so he has like a $7 million painting that he brought over. She's like, dude, I'll front you the collateral, but make sure you just get that painting back safe. But this is when she slowly but realizes that all these guys are really tied into the mob. Like, she knew it was some mob syndicates, but she didn't know how far they went or how deep it got. Present time, she's back in her lawyer's office. He's trying to get her out of deep shit with the Russians. He's like, look, bottom line, I'm trying to get you some favorite, sensible recommendation of sentencing, or you're going to give up some names. She's like, you know, I can't give up those names. So then they change the subject. He asks about Molly's dad. Then she gets a flashback about her mom and dad arguing on the phone like he's been cheating with multiple women and stuff. So she's like, look, I'll tell them everything they want to know about me, but that's it. So the police caught up with Bradley. Apparently his $7 million hedge fund was really all just a scheme. It was just a plan. Ponzi scheme, if you will. When he was arrested, he had about $740 in the bank, and he was snitching on everybody. When they brought in Molly, she goes with some of the names that Brad was talking about, not all of them. After that, she was taking all types of drugs, Adderall, Xanax, Coke, alcohol, just doing everything. Then she goes back to doing one of her games. She starts talking to Doug again. Doug starts talking about how much he loves her and all that. She's like, come on with all that, man. Stay focused. But there's something about Doug that's going to save her life later on. Well, anyway, she has a driver that she trusts to pick her up and take her home. And she trusts him so much, she actually starts telling her about how she used to be a skier. The driver says, yeah, if you need some other poker players, I got some 2 Russian dudes I can set you up with. So she takes the meeting with these guys. But these guys really don't want to play. They actually want to be in a partnership with her. She's like, no, I'm good. I'm feeling pretty well protected. He's like, you sure? And I'm thinking to myself, this is not really a negotiation. This is more like a request. Well, anyways, they part ways as she heads back to her hotel. She comes to the door thinking that she's about to get some packages from Reggie. Turns out this mafia dude just comes through and shows up at her door. He basically makes her open up the safe and gets money out of her. Then he puts a gun to her head and tells her, like, yeah, your mom lives in Colorado, doesn't she? And he beat the hell out of her, took the money, and left. And because of everything that was going down, she didn't want to go to the hospital or alert the police or anything like that. After that, she stayed in a hotel room for 10 days. She didn't even come out. She wasn't even bothered to look at the mail. But then when she decided to look at the newspapers, yeah, she found out 2 days later after she got beat, 125 mob niggas was arrested. And she thinking to herself, no wonder JC didn't call back. So she was on the way to do one more game. You know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden the phone rang. It was Douglas calling her, telling them that he was hiding in the bathroom. He starts going on, talking about, I didn't tell anybody nothing, this, that, and the third. And then she's like, who? You ain't tell who nothing. And then she's like, again, why are you hiding in the bathroom? Then she gets a text from Shelby saying FBI's here, stay away from the game. She packs up some money, flushes drugs, and she about to get the fuck up out of there. And now in real time, that's when she's telling the prosecutor that she took a cab to see her mom in Colorado. They asked her if she tied with the mafia, they asked her if she ever traded sex for money, all these other questions. Obviously she said no to. Edris gets heated at the questioning. He's like, yo, she just rigged the game. That's it. That's all she did. I mean, not rigged, raked the game. And basically, the testimony he gave put his job on the line. So at this point, they seized $5 million of her assets just to make sure they get some extra names for these Russians or whatever. But they just locked up 125 of them, so it's like, what the fuck? After all that's done, she goes to get a hot dog, and then she goes ice skating. Then all of a sudden, she sees her dad out the blue. She's like, what the fuck? So she's tripping up the fact that he's even in New York. And I won't go through all the particulars of the dialogue. I'll let you watch it for yourself. Let's just say some truth came out on his end, and that she really needs a therapist. So now she's back in the office of LJ. He's talking about land. They're going to have around and recommend 42 months in prison to take a certain deal, but in the process, she'll end up getting her money back. And he's trying to talk sense to her, like, look, you kept their secrets, but where are they at when you need them? But she just feels like in her heart she can't say it. And you can tell she's about to break down at this point. So in the day of court, she pleads guilty. So at this point, we don't know what they're deliberating on. The judge said the Russians have committed more than anything that could be committed in this indictment on her. So basically, all she got to do is pay back the state $2 million plus an extra $200,000 and do 200 hours of community service. She's got to be the luckiest woman on the fucking planet for that shit. The family and the lawyer gather around to have dinner. We get a flashback to the day when she messed up her neck, and she had miraculously got back up on her own feet then. How the fuck she did that out of it, I have no idea. And that's the end of the movie. There's a lot of technical aspects I didn't get into because, honestly, it was a lot. So basically, you got 3 more days left to watch Molly's Game on Netflix. Check it out. It's going to stay on there until March 31st. Like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. Slick DZ, all DZ, Mr. Big. Who the goddamn slogan?